A little over 10 months ago, I sat right here on this floor and made a video covering the Insta360 X4 with the specific question of, is 360 video finally good enough? At the end of that video, I said that while the Insta360 X4 wasn't going to be used to create the highest quality videos out there, it was going to let you create videos that no other type of camera could. Out of the 3 different cameras I brought for my first ever ski trip, the one I had the most fun using with the best looking footage of us skiing turned out to be the X4, proving my point that is about having the right tool for the right job. And now Insta360 just launched their new X5 camera and asked if they could sponsor an overview video covering the new camera. And since I was having so much fun with the X4, I was dying to know what new updates came in the X5. So let's start off by talking about the most exciting updates to the Insta360 X5, the camera sensor and the 3 AI chips. Previously, the Insta360 X4 had a 1/2-inch camera sensor, which did a great job in capturing some awesome looking footage during daylight, but definitely struggled when shooting videos indoors and in low light conditions. But with the X5, we now have a 1/1.28-inch sensor, a 144% increase in sensor size, and the results show. First of all, the image quality in general just looks even better than the footage we were getting out of the X4. Details in the frame look sharp and dynamic range looks incredibly good. Even in scenes with massive exposure differences in the highlights and shadows, like this BTS shot where we're fully backlit by the sun, we're still able to clearly see our faces and the sky isn't completely blown out. When I talked to the team at Insta360, they mentioned that the goal was to get the footage to look much closer to that produced by their Ace Pro 2, which to me actually gets it to the point where I'd be more than happy to cut 360 footage into my regular edits because it'll cut together nicely. Speaking of the Ace Pro 2, they brought over one of my favorite features from that camera, PureVideo mode. This is basically a low-light mode built by Insta360 to give you a clean-looking low-light shot with very little effort. And when you compare the low-light footage coming out of the X5 compared to the X4, you'll see a world of difference in how the new triple AI chip handles denoising along with that larger camera sensor. I wasn't kidding when I was saying that the X5 is finally usable in low-light. There is one thing about shooting 360 videos that I actually kind of really hate, and that's going to be the editing workflow. Like just trying to get a clip from my 360 camera off of it onto my phone so I can post it on like Instagram stories. Editing one clip isn't that bad. You know, it might take a few seconds either on the desktop app or the mobile app. But when you need to do like 10, 12 clips and you want to get like multiple angles from each clip, man, the process is so slow. But there is a new feature in the X5 that kind of makes this a little bit better. They call it their InstaFrame Mode, and when you shoot in this mode, it will record both a 360 video file and a flat video file. That flat video file can be framed based on face tracking or a fixed view, so that means you're able to shoot 360 videos at up to 5.7K for you to reframe in the editor later, but at the same time you get a 1080p flat video file that's already tracked and ready to share immediately. One of the experiences of owning a 360 camera is just how delicate you have to be with the lens. On the Insta360 X4, it actually came with a little lens guard that helped protect the actual lens itself, but it would kind of really easily get dirty or scratches, and then that would cause reflections, and that would make your footage look kind of bad. But you'd always want it on because if you accidentally scratched your X4 lens, you'd have to send it into Insta360 to get it fixed. But now the X5 is actually designed to have a replaceable lens, so the user themselves can replace it. They just need to buy one of these replacement lens kits, and the good news is one of these things only costs $29.99, which I know $29.99 isn't like that cheap, but in the grand scheme of things in 2025, that's quite affordable. I guess that means now I should probably try to do this on camera to talk about how hard or how easy it is. All right, well, let's do it live. Okay, that took about 10 minutes. Honestly, I thought that was gonna be a lot scarier, a lot harder. I was like holding my breath for half of it, partially because like my work surface is not necessarily clean. I'm doing this outside. You should probably do this in like on a very clean table with not a lot of dust floating around. Taking off and putting it on was actually really easy. The thing that took the longest was really just cleaning that area underneath to make sure we didn't introduce new dust or anything down there. I don't know, long story short, that is way easier than I thought that was going to be, and that makes me much more confident to just absolutely send it with this camera. Like, let's say I'm going skiing again. If I crash and the lens breaks, so be it. $30 to replace a lens, that's really not bad. All right, so let's go ahead and compare the microphones between these two cameras right now. You're listening to the Insta360 X4, and now you're listening to the microphone on the Insta360 X5. Now, the X5 does have an updated microphone with an updated algorithm for wind reduction and all that good stuff. And right now, you're probably gonna hear the best versions of both of these microphones since we're in a pretty quiet and controlled environment. There's not a lot of ambient noise in the background, and there's not a lot of wind either. So I've said this in the X4 video, and I'm gonna say it in the X5 video. I think the audio coming out of these two, out of these cameras is good enough for like capturing memories, for vlogging. Obviously, it's not gonna be, professional shotgun microphone audio, but I think it's serviceable. And if you really do want to step up the audio game past that, I'd probably recommend picking up some sort of like external microphone like a Rode Wireless Pro or a DJI Mic 2 or something along those lines. Here's a quick little wind test. It's quite windy right now, so I'm curious how good the wind reduction is on this new X5's internal microphone. Mic test 1, 2, mic test 1, 2. Battery life is also improved on the X5. They upgraded from a 2300 milliamp hour battery to a 2400 milliamp hour battery, so you now should be able to get upwards of 3 hours of battery life. And to me, the much more interesting headline here is that you can charge from 0 to 80% in just 20 minutes. I also saw somewhere in the documentation that I got from Insta360 that they updated the design of the X5 to improve heat dissipation. And I will say, on the X4, when you shot in 8K for a prolonged period of time, the X4 would get pretty warm. I mean, as a matter of fact, Insta360 sells thermo grip covers for the X4 to combat that specific issue. And I will say that from anecdotal evidence and obviously my limited shooting with the X5 for the past 2 to 3 weeks, the 8K mode did get warm when you shoot with it, but it didn't get as warm / as hot as quickly as the X4. So it's definitely it's going in the correct direction. The heat dissipation is better in the X5, but if you're shooting nonstop at 8K, I'm pretty sure you'll still overheat this camera. If you're new to shooting on Insta360 cameras like this X5 here and you're wondering what camera settings should I be using to get the best image quality possible out of it, well, here are the settings that Insta360 recommends, and I definitely think it helps with getting the most and the best image quality out of this camera sensor. If you have plenty of light, shoot at 8K 24 frames per second or 8K 30 frames per second. If your scene has really strong contrast, like in a high dynamic range situation, try using the 5.7K active HDR mode. If you're shooting in low light situations, shoot at 8K 24 frames per second or 8K 30 frames per second in PureVideo mode, and make sure to also go into your camera settings and set your bitrate to high for max image quality. Just know this will probably double your file sizes. When choosing color profiles, go with either standard, or if you plan on color grading later and want to be able to preserve those highlights a little better, I personally like shooting in iLog. The only downside is that it's going to cap your resolution at 5.7K, but I find that the image still looks plenty sharp and it gives me way more control over the look of the image. You should also set your sharpness to either medium if you just want to export it and post it, or set it to low if you plan on color grading because you can add it back in when editing. And of course, you can set your camera settings manually like ISO and shutter speed, but I find that if I'm out and about with the X5, I tend to prefer to shoot in auto mode so I can focus on what I'm doing. And I find that setting the EV value to -0.7 does a great job on preserving the highlight details in a bright scene. Let's talk about pricing and my thoughts on the new Insta360 X5, starting with pricing. The new Insta360 X5 is available right now starting at $549, but of course will cost a little bit more depending on which accessory bundle you're interested in getting if this is your first 360 camera from them. If you're interested in checking out the new X5, I'll have links in the description down below. Now, here are my thoughts on this new camera from Insta360. A lot of the stuff that I already really liked from the X4, of course, made it back into the X5, if not upgraded. Starting off with the invisible selfie stick magic that's happening with the video stitching that really makes this camera feel incredibly fun to use because it feels like you have someone else filming you and you can get a completely different perspective that you normally can't get. Then there's the really good stabilization, so even if you're doing more intense action sports, you're still getting super steady footage. Of course, the ability to reframe your shot after the fact is by far one of the most useful and interesting things about shooting your videos in 360. You just have so many more options afterwards. Maybe you want a clip looking at you for one export, and then in that same video file, you can get an export that's showing what you're looking at. The image quality is also pretty good, and it's about the same as what you'd get out of an action camera, but with a lot more flexibility, making it useful for a variety of shooting scenarios, from capturing BTS footage of me working to just being a fun little camera to bring with me to capture memories and little outings. And of course, the camera is waterproof, so that adds on to the list of possibilities of where you can bring this camera to and what you can shoot with it. And for me, I think the biggest upgrade with the X5 definitely has to be that much larger camera sensor, because it's enabling even better image quality than we could have gotten out of previous versions of this camera. And most importantly, it allows us to finally really get some decent footage in low light situations. So if you're somebody that already owns the X4, I think that this is honestly a pretty worthy upgrade. And if you've never shot 360 video before, then I think right now is actually a pretty interesting time to jump into it.